Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with communication coach Marcus Higgs. Marcus, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's good to be here, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation. But before we get started, just, introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Marcus today?
Who is Marcus today? Uh, Um, I'm a communication coach. I'm a messenger. That's what we say. I There's a poem that came to mind. That's why thinking. It starts, I am a messenger, sanctified to speak with the divine voice, and know it was not of my own choice, rather God's will be done, because I am part of a chosen generation of royal priesthood, a holy nation, a special person used to proclaim him who called me out of darkness into the marvelous light. You see, I am the mic, and the Lord is my controller. Anyhow, it's a poem that I wrote a long time ago, and it's a poem of identity, and it's just while some of my ideas have changed from the poem, it's still true that I believe I'm here to serve other people, called by greater powers, higher forces, and I do that through communication. And I do that with parents and adolescents during their tumultuous teen years as they're shifting their identities. And I'm looking forward to doing that through technology on a global sense around the world. And we could speak more about that, but I'm a person trying to put good vibes out into the world. That's who I am.
I love that. And we need that. We need more good vibes, and we need more people putting good vibes out there. There's no doubt about that. Um, so, tell me a little bit about, what made you go down this path of, trying to help parents and preteens and early teens communicate better.
Yeah. So you told me a bit about your backstory. Here's a little intro to mine. My mother's from the Philippines. My dad is from the Bahamas. And they divorced when I was 12. I went with my father to the Bahamas. I visited my mother often every summer and every other Christmas. And there's no doubt that she loved me. She expressed it and so on, but they couldn't figure out what they were, not figure out, but they were amicable. They spoke well about them to us,
Hmm.
but between them, they couldn't be together. It's
Right.
perfectly fine. Um, so I grew up in the Bahamas, studied communication in Alabama, Oakwood University in Alabama. That's where I got in touch with communication. I remember my communication teacher saying, the quality of your communication is directly related to the quality of your life. Um, did poetry, did writing, went straightway to South Korea as a missionary teacher. And I say my worldview expanded. And while I still have a connection with the divine, sincere connection, I don't push anything on anybody. It's BYOB with me, bring your own beliefs. But I didn't want to preach anything I didn't wholeheartedly believe. So, but I loved teaching. So I continued teaching in the classroom in Saudi Arabia, Spain, Thailand, and South Korea, international schools, and so on. And these are the conversations that I'd have in the classrooms because I was teaching English, English language arts, and decided to come out of the classroom. Mr. Rogers said, if you want to help the kids, support the parents. So I was thinking like, okay, how can I support the parents? Committed to them long term with communication, especially with the mental health issues that are going on now. Uh, I remember coming out of classroom one time and I told my chairperson, I was just like, man, this feels like therapy. I'm not gonna lie. And he said, Marcus, that's why we call it the humanities. We're teaching them how to be human. And that's what I've committed my life work to. It is working out the communication between the parent and the kid so they can understand each other because there's misunderstanding, there's inherent misunderstanding during this age.
Hmm.
The kid with themselves and then the kid with their parents. And if you could make sense of that a little bit more, you could set the kid up for what's coming down later on the line. And that's how I got into this.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And before we started recording, we talked a little bit how, you're a bit of a nomad as well. And you just mentioned about some of the places you've traveled to, which is a much broader scope than what I'm traveling at in the RV. But tell me a little bit about how experiencing those different cultures um, has affected you today and being able to look at things and recognize different perspectives. Because I think that's one of the things that, you know, we feel so blessed to experience. I mean, even in our own country, the United States is a massive, massive country. I don't think people who live here really understand how big of a country we are. And there are so many subcultures just within our own country that we've been blessed to experience, and it's had a profound effect on us and how we look at things and how it's changed our perspective. So, you're on an even grander scale than what we are with where you've traveled to and that sort of thing. So, you know, how has that affected you and your perspective today?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Two ways come to mind. The first is understanding people have what we call values, and that's things that are important to them, right? I call it virtues and values. Virtues are the 24 character strengths of which they're trying to work to the well-being of other people and the well-being of themselves. Everybody's trying to do that. They're trying their best to be well in all those cultures and all those things. And then values is what's important to them. Um, and it's different from culture to culture. And just to give you really quickly what I'm thinking about, while I was teaching in Spain, I had some friends who were very, let's say, sexually liberated, right? Um, it, they live that freedom lifestyle or whatever. And this is while I was working in Saudi, and I had to explain to them how some of my female Saudi friends were talking about how, this is what they valued as to why they dress this way. Not if you agree with it or disagree with it. Um, I'm totally neutral. But then I'm having this conversation with these people in Spain. When I went back to Saudi, they're talking about how these people, how they live these lives very sexually liberated. They're evil and all this. I'm like, no, no, no. They're just living their values.
Right.
Anyhow, it's a gray line, but learning to accept people where they are. That's what I learned. That's the first thing. The second thing I learned is how everybody's the same to an extent. There's a base human quality where it's like we're all trying to make progress. Some people they're looking for fame, fortune, prestige, and resources and so on. But then even below that, everybody's trying to know themselves, live a full life, and be part of a community. And if you can meet those needs, like life can flourish. Like flourishing looks the same in all cultures. Living a good life looks the same in all cultures.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit more gracious with people as I meet them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it allows us to pause a little bit, um, as opposed to
Mhm.
rushing to judgment, which is kind of what I don't know if it's a born trait or a learned trait in the human, but it's definitely a trait that I think we all have is we rush to judgment when you first see somebody and you look at how they're dressed or how their hair is or how they have tattoos or piercings or whatever. We rush to judgment instead of, you know, giving them that grace. So I do agree with you in that sense. It allows you to, you know, be a little bit more hesitant, so to speak, um, or we start to, you know, say, wow, what's wrong with that person? Or why are they doing that? Let's get their story first, you know? So, um,
One thing that you mentioned in the intro, if I may, real quick,
yeah, please.
you said your mother was doing volunteer work with the Salvation Army, right?
Mhm.
When you find yourself in service to other people, like there's a point where I say suffering looks the same. And when you have shared humanity, yeah, it looks the same. And we're here to alleviate that. And that's how you can lose some of that judgment if it's learned or if it is inherent, like regardless of where it comes from. When you're of service to other people, you start to see a lot of people come and then it looks the same.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, that's a great way to look at it for sure. So, we talked about you experiencing those different cultures as you traveled abroad, but you also mentioned in your intro that, you know, you had a mother from the Philippines and a father from the Bahamas, which obviously, again, are two completely different cultures coming together there. How did that,
Yeah.
affect you being in a multicultural house right there as you were growing up? As you grew up and even as your parents eventually, divorced, kind of experiencing those two separate cultures again in a different way. How did that affect you?
And where they met in Lincoln, Nebraska, of all
Oh,
places.
wow. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Oh man. Wow, that's amazing. How did it affect me? You know, I speak with other multicultural families, and when you have like multiple identities like that, it either makes or breaks you. And what I mean by that is sometimes people are just like, oh, I'm not enough Bahamian or I'm not enough this. And there's a sense of enoughness there. Or the kid goes into, I am this, I'm uniquely this, this is me. Um, I had to learn quickly to get in where I fit in and filling spaces where people are looking at you like, I can't quite make you out. But from the inside out, I had to make me out, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
I had to know who I am. And from a young age, it's really, yeah, I'm me. I'm fully me. Like I knew who I was. I mean, yeah, I deal with insecurities. That's a human experience. But from an early age, I had to figure out, no, I am who I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, what was it specifically that made you want to, go down this path of, helping parents and children communicate better? Did you have um, a good communication experience with your parents or a bad one? And how did that affect the decision to enter into what you're doing now?
Yeah. I'd say yes and I'll explain that. I say yes and to everything. I think the teenage years are filled with misunderstanding. It's inherent. Like there will in communication we say there is conflict in every relationship. What defines it is how we manage the conflict. That's the first point. Second point is the dots connect themselves when you look back. Like you were telling me about your lived experience when you had to move up north, and it was a good decision, but it created, I don't know, a rift or so. Like I don't want to speak to your experience, you know better than I do, but me and my dad, we did have conflict, but that is what has helped me with my critical thinking. My dad was an educator. I went with him because he could financially provide for me, which has afforded me a life of the privilege that I do have. Um, that said, there was tension in our relationship from then. And as I grew up, looking back on it, I'm like, there's no shame and no blame and no complaining, but like adults set the tone for the relationship. Adults, like you can't expect that from a teenager.
Right.
And we all live in the biggest room, the room for improvement. So now I want to help parents skill them up to improve themselves in that communication and how to, while they're pursuing their dreams, pursuing their desires, trying to take care of a family. I get it. Yeah. Um, how also are you there to have quality time? Doesn't have to be quantity of time, but how do you let that kid know this is the world and prepare them for the world? That's the first why, if you will, that you asked me. The second why is being in the classroom, man, knowing what the kids are going through. Second, the third one is having parents cry in teacher parent meetings, like not knowing. And it's just like, I can't tell you in these 10 minutes, 15 minutes of how I can help you with your kid. But if I had the chance in a bigger platform, like, yeah, I'd want to create that platform. So that's what I am doing. I'm creating that platform.
Yeah.
So that those are the other second and third whys. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And, just to elaborate on one of the things that you said, and I know, some of my listeners, they've read my books and have listened often. They know bits and pieces of my story for sure. But yeah, when I was going into my ninth grade year of high school, my freshman year of high school, that summer is when my mother made the decision to, um, you know, tell me that it was time for me to live with my father in Pennsylvania. Um,
Okay.
and again, at the time, I I can say I hated her for that decision. I remember that phone call because I always went to Pennsylvania every summer to stay with my dad. I mean, literally from like,
Mhm.
you know, no more than 3 days after school was out in Florida, I was on a plane headed to Pennsylvania and generally was flying back no more than 2 or 3 days before school started in Florida. So like literally my entire summer. So I left Pennsylvania or left Florida going to Pennsylvania thinking that in August I would be on a flight back to Florida. And sometime middle of you know, middle of my summer vacation, I received a phone call from my mom and she told me it was that flight was not going to be made. Um, and again, in that moment, I can honestly say that, you know, I hated her. And um, I don't know how long it was till I talked to her again after that phone call. Um,
But yeah.
but as you, like you said, go back and connect the dots, I know today that that's a, you know, decision that saved my life. I mean, literally saved my life.
Mhm. Mhm.
That winter when I was um, living in, now living in Pennsylvania, I got news that one of my friends who I hung out with, all the time, um, had been decapitated because him and a bunch of our friends were drinking and
Mhm.
driving and riding down the highway, hanging their head out the window, um, just being stupid like teenagers do,
Yeah.
and didn't see this street sign that was approaching, and literally took his head clean off. Um, and I know I would have been in that car if I'd have been in Florida at the time and could have been hanging out the window with them. Um, Even if I wasn't, I have no idea. I mean, I know how it affected me, um, you know, being 1,100 miles away from it when I heard the news. I can't imagine being in the car, you know.
That car. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think what you're doing in trying to, you know, open those lines of communication and get parents and kids communicating better, um, is work that's probably saving lives, you know. So I commend you for, for what you're doing in that space. Um, but, what are some of the biggest challenges you face, you know, in some of those initial meetings of, trying to, make them understand more in the moment how important this is as opposed to, reflecting, years later.
Yeah. Um, I'm well, when you are a coach, when you are a teacher, you have to ask a person, hey, do you want me to speak some hard truths into your life?
Tough love.
Because yeah, you need that permission. And what it is with parents is I I understand, well, not as a parent, but I as a person who works with kids, I understand you're wanting to keep them safe and secure. Um, and this breaking away is happening. I'm here to help you understand that breaking away. And two, I'm here to help you set the tone of what's going to happen in this relationship because the kid is not going to play fair. The kid is not like we can't expect the kid to have the answers here. And I have to trust you with your wisdom to bring it out in you to be regulated, to be stable in who you are. And I'm here to support you in that regard. Um, and and again, it's not blame, but you are responsible for what's going to happen here. Because it's very easy to start complaining about the kid, start blaming the kid, and being like, "What? I'll give you space for that." But then, how do we take ownership for it? And it's hard, man. That's where that balance is. Of I'm trying to care for you, and I feel you pushing me off. I get it, and and you're ready to throw up your hands. But it's like, okay, before we throw up our hands, if we're falling short of our expectations, where do we feel not supported or what skills do we need to improve? And I'll work with you in that regard. I believe I'll help you in regards to communication. I'll point you in other areas in regards to therapy or counseling when needed. Um, there's solutions there, but you said what is the hardest thing? It is getting them to understand why change, why now, and why it's you.
Yeah.
Like getting a person to change and then change from the inside out. I'm not trying to force anything, but if you come to work with me, we're in alignment that, yeah, we're going to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I come, I'd coached baseball for 30 years, so
Yeah.
you know, again, a different type of teacher, but I was always, one that was more about teaching life lessons through the game as opposed to teaching the X's and O's of the game, which I did that as well, but I was definitely more about teaching, the life lessons. And, over my 30 years of doing that, I mean, I saw significant changes in how parents interacted with their children, being, you know, I mean, in the sports world, we'd call it helicopter parents, not not letting their, trying to protect their children from every failure that they could ever experience, as opposed to understanding how, you know, letting them get out there and, you know, get a bloody nose or skin their knee up every once in a while is not the worst thing in the world that can happen to them. So we haven't talked about how long you've been in this line of work, but you know, have you seen those same type of changes, and what type of challenges has that made, where parents really struggle with taking a step back and letting go? I mean, we got parents who got tracking devices on their phones for their kids, which is good and bad. Like I get it. Um, but like there's all kinds of different things from certainly from when I grew up, and I'm sure from when you grew up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you look at there's this book out, Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation, from 2012, when social media really kicked in. Um, that's when we started noticing this uptick in mental health issues. And I mean, look at it. We're spending more time inside, we're spending more time with screens and so on. In my philosophy of human development, the first question is, who are you? It starts with character, right? And that's what we're all trying to answer in life. When you know who you are, you're able to deal with the stressors of life, the inherent stressors of life. Ideally, the stressors aren't chronic. Ideally, the stressors aren't overpowering. That creates ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. But if you know how to manage those stressors, and that happens through the stories we tell ourselves and the support we have, if you're able to deal with those, that's how you grow. So you're right. Go get a bloody nose, go get a scraped up knee, but we're not getting outside. That's one. And two, we don't know who we are because when the screens close, what happens to our identity? So what I am trying to help the parents do is establish that identity in the way that you talk with your kid and the way you communicate with your kid. I am trying to get them outside. I am trying to get them on the courts. You know what I mean? That is a big problem, and there's a solution to it. But that's the problem of this generation, which yeah, okay, let's deal with it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. But I think it comes down to balance, Um,
Mhm.
technology is an incredible thing. And I think
That's what we're doing here.
yeah, and that's an issue that I think we as humans, and certainly probably more so Americans than some other cultures, we have trouble finding balance. Like it's either, all or nothing, for whatever reason, just like, when you talk about health food and stuff like that, like again, if you do everything within reason and, in small doses, it's when you eat, you know, the entire bag of potato chips as opposed to a small portion of potato chips with a nice healthy, other healthy parts of your diet, Um,
Yeah.
and we just, can't seem to get that as a whole, So is that part of your conversation as well as, look, the technology's there, but how do we make it productive as opposed to destructive?
Say it like this. I remember I was working out with a coach one time, and I wasn't getting my sleep, so I wasn't up to the workout like I wanted to, and it happened more than once. And he gave me one of the best coaching sessions ever. Like it's a physical workout, like a CrossFit coach. And he looked at me and said, "Marcus, it's just self-regulation," and that was it. And really, what self-regulation is the rules that we give ourselves for the game we want to play. That was it. Or that's how I understood it. You're right. Inside the I don't even want to call it developed world, but just in a place of abundance or affluence, the question then is asked, what rules do we want to give ourselves for the game we want to play? For me, the game is other people matter. Like I want other people to experience a good life and well-being also. So I got to put some boundaries on myself of what I'm going to do so that I can express that. And when it comes down to it, that's really what it is. What do you want? And what are you willing to self-regulate? What rules are you going to give yourself that you can be over dominion of yourself? Because I believe you are a sovereign being. Like, and I want you to live your life as full as you are with your choices. Do you, Blue? Like, for real. But what rules are you going to give yourself for the game you want to play? Like, what do you want? Um, that's what it comes down to. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, um, you have to buy into whatever you're doing. And as I told you before we started recording, my mom's, second career choice was to become an addictions counselor. And,
Yeah.
she would often say, like, I can give, these people all the advice I want, but sooner or later they have to make a decision. It's their decision to choose to be sober and to choose to change their lifestyle. And that, whether you're talking addiction or anything else, you can get all the advice you can get in the world, but it's your final decision as to whether or not you're going to make that change. Um, you know, have you run into any clients where it's really been an uphill battle, um, you know, getting them to, make that decision on their own?
So I work with the parent in helping them to be present inside the child's life. That said, I have a family member who struggles with their own substance abuse. Um, I know this narrative from very intimately, right? I work with them, and when I say I work with them, I'm as present as I can be as a relative in their life. I've not worked with a parent who is dealing with substance abuse yet, or like their kid is. Um, Eventually I will. I would need to be more skilled in that regard. I just know it like from my own lived experience. And that's the only advice I could give if they ask for it. and I would direct them to, parents of A or what is it, family. So I would
Al-Anon.
direct them to the right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Al-Anon. Um, man, that's yeah, that's a hard question that I've not had to answer with the client yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether it's, you know, the instance we just talked about, um, or any other instance where, again, you don't have the answer. But it seems like you're the type of person who, if you don't have it, you're gonna try to, find it for yourself to give to them or get them pointed in the direction of, finding that answer. And I think that's the sign of a really good coach because we don't all have the answers. So, you know, I tell people all the time, I think one of the assets that I have in my own life is, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So, if you're gonna want me to redo the plumbing in your house, like I know I'm not the guy for that job, so I'm not even gonna venture down that road. So, it sounds like you're the same way. So where did you learn that from to, it's better to give no advice than bad advice, and how, seeking out the correct answer for them or getting them on the road to the correct answer.
Yeah. First, first it's the belief that everything's figure outable, you know, everything's figure outable. And then we look for evidence and examples of where this has been answered before. So you're looking to the past for somebody else's stories of the path that they went on to answer this. That's more data. Then it's what's the next step forward? I'm willing to be with you on the next step too. I trust your wisdom, like because I need you to walk the journey so that you can own it when you get there. And I'm here to support you. Um, where'd I get that? I from my own bounce backs, you know? You lived enough life. I got some salt and pepper down here. You have a little bit more salt and
More
pepper.
salt. Yep.
But trusting your resilience. That's what bounce back means, re-saltar. So I guess that's where it comes from. And again, I'm trying to instill this in kids at a younger age so that they get in that loop of, okay, yeah, I got this, I got this. But everything's figure outable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Man, Marcus, we could go on for quite some time here, but I do have limits on the podcast. So
Yeah,
before
to
we
get
wrap
to a track meet. Yeah.
before we wrap things up though, is there anything that we missed that you think would be important for the listeners before we wrap up?
This is before that last question, eh?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking, all right. Um, I mentioned earlier, every relationship has conflict. Determines the conflict doesn't define the relationship. What defines it is how we manage conflict. To be a little bit more on the nose with that, it's repair and reconnections are a part of the process of growth. Ernest Hemingway said, you know, life breaks us all, and some are made stronger in the broken places. In those broken places, it's when we repair and reconnect because you're signaling what this relationship means to me. So don't just leave it. And what repair and reconnect means is I did something that wasn't in line with who I am and who I want to be. This is how I made it right. And this is a promise I'm making going forward. Trust is built over time. And when you do that, you learn to trust yourself in regards to this relationship, and the other person can start to trust you. Yeah. Repair and reconnection is a big part of growing if you want to grow with your kid or if you want to grow with anybody in any relationship.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Marcus, how do people find you if they want to reach out to you on the internet, your social media platforms? Where can they track you down?
Or marcushiggs.com is the easiest place. I'm going through a rebuilding phase, but if you reach out to me there, um, I'll have my workshops and the connections to all the other places you can find me.
Love it. Love it. So that does bring us to our final question, which, as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Franti song Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Marcus does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
What's one of the little things that I do?
Yes.
Um, oh, I understood the question wrong, but I have an answer for that. Wake up with gratitude, and I'll explain it. What gratitude is realizing something outside of yourself. It's taking the initial action for your well-being. I didn't ask the sun to rise. I didn't ask my heart to beat. If I'm experiencing well-being and recognizing those things outside of me that are actually acting for my well-being, why? Because when I take that, it then encourages me to act for others. And that's where the overpouring and the virtuous cycle of love and gratitude, it's two sides of the same coin. I'm filled up, so I have to pour out, and I recognize other things pouring out from me. So start with gratitude. If you can't start with gratitude, start with the service of love.
I love that. Love that. That's a great answer. Marcus, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's a great conversation. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a lot out of it. For those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, check out my Pay It Forward program where you can purchase a book, and Sandy and I will donate it somewhere along our travels. And again, Marcus, thank you so much. This was an absolutely incredible conversation. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.